I needed to sell my old high-end road bike. I was moving across the country for a new job and couldn't take it with me, so I listed it on Facebook Marketplace for $800. I wanted a quick, clean sale. A guy named David messaged me immediately. His profile was locked, but he had a few mutual friends from my town, guys I knew from high school. So I figured he was legit. He was overly eager, which should have been my first clue. He offered the full $800, no questions asked, which is unusual for a bike sale. He asked to meet up at a public park near my apartment at 8 p.m. It was a well-lit area, so I agreed. When I got there, David was waiting, but he seemed off. He was twitchy, kept looking around, and instead of immediately checking the bike, he just kept asking me about my routine. Where exactly do you usually ride? Do you ride mostly at night or during the day? He even asked which apartment building I lived in. I shut that down quickly. I handed him the bike, he gave me the cash, and he rode off. Transaction complete. I breathed a sigh of relief. But that relief didn't last. The next morning, I woke up to a friend request from David on my locked Instagram account, which he couldn't have easily found. I ignored it. Then I got a text message from an unknown number. Love the black wheels on the bike. Hope to see you out on the trail soon. It was a little creepy, but I figured it was just an overzealous new cycling buddy. The real fear hit 3 days later. I was leaving the gym at 6 a.m., still half asleep, and I saw a familiar sight. David, on my old bike, parked across the street. He wasn't riding, he was just sitting there, watching my building. I ducked back inside the gym entrance and watched him. He pulled out his phone, snapped a picture, and then slowly rode away, heading in the opposite direction from any known bike trail. I called the two mutual friends, but they both confirmed they didn't know a David who rode bikes. They said they must have been added by mistake. That's when I realized he hadn't bought the bike to ride it. He bought it to track me. He had a reason to be near my home without looking suspicious. A week later, I saw him again. It was 11 p.m., and I was looking out my bedroom window. I had a new habit of checking the street, and there he was, parked about a block down, just sitting in the darkness. I immediately called the police's non-emergency line, but they told me he hadn't actually committed a crime. Buying a bike and parking near my building wasn't illegal. I was moving in 2 days, which saved me, but the sheer cold fear of realizing a stranger had paid $800 just to know my routine and my location is something that sticks with you. I left town in a hurry, convinced that if I had stayed, he would have eventually done something much worse than just watching. I still check my rearview mirror constantly. I live way out in the woods, outside of a major southern city. My property is huge and isolated. I was selling a heavy-duty air compressor from my massive detached workshop, which sits about 100 yards from my main house. I listed it for $750 on Marketplace. A woman named Dana messaged me. She insisted on meeting at the workshop to test the unit. I agreed to meet her at 4:30 p.m. on a Saturday. Dana arrived at 4:30 p.m. sharp. She wasn't just observing the workshop, she was studying the entire path between the shop and my house. The distance, the cover provided by the trees, the angles. She finally paid me the $700 in cash and drove off at 4:55 p.m., promising to return the next day. I felt deeply uneasy. I locked the shop and walked back to my house. That night, around 1:30 a.m., I was jolted awake by a faint, metallic noise. It sounded like something scraping against the workshop door. I live in the middle of nowhere. Every sound is magnified. I grabbed my flashlight and a baseball bat. I quietly slipped out of the house. The moon was almost gone, and it was pitch black. I crept toward the workshop. As I got closer, the scraping stopped. I held my breath. Then I heard a very quiet, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails tapping glass, coming from the small, high window of the shop. I shone my flashlight up. The light caught a glimpse of something moving inside. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. I crept back toward the shadows of the trees near my house. Then, the silence broke. The workshop door, the one I had triple-checked, slowly, silently opened. A tall, dark figure slipped out. It wasn't carrying the compressor. It was carrying a backpack and a long metal bar. It was Dana. But she didn't head for the main gate. She turned and started walking, slowly and deliberately, straight toward my house. I called 911 immediately at 1:45 a.m., whispering into the phone while hiding behind a giant oak tree. I watched Dana stop halfway, look at the house for a long time, and then start moving from tree to tree, using the darkness as cover. The police arrived at 2:10 a.m. They found Dana hidden behind a huge stack of firewood, less than 50 feet from my back porch. She had the long metal bar and a set of my spare keys, which she must have stolen during the distraction earlier. She confessed that she didn't want the compressor. She had purchased it to justify her presence on the property. Her plan was to spend the night quietly in the workshop, and then using the stolen keys, wait for me inside my own house the next day, when she knew I'd be alone. She wasn't looking for shelter. She was looking for me. The realization that she was actively stalking me across my own dark property and waiting for the right moment to enter my home is a fear that still gives me nightmares. I was in college, trying to make some extra cash, so I listed some old gaming gear on Facebook Marketplace. I put up a used USB microphone setup with a large sound isolation shield for just $50, hoping it would sell fast. I immediately got a message from a guy named Mark. His profile picture was completely black, and I could tell the account had only been active for a few weeks. I shrugged it off, thinking, it's only $50. What's the big deal? Mark said he'd pay in cash, but insisted on meeting at my apartment address. He claimed the isolation shield was too bulky to haul on a bus, and he needed to park close. It was my first time doing an in-person pickup like this. I hesitated, but it was 2 p.m. Nothing bad happens in broad daylight, I thought, and sent the address. 5 minutes later, an unknown number called. The voice on the other end was rough and sounded slightly distorted, almost like someone was using a voice modulator. It's Mark. I'm on the way. Is anyone else home? Your dad or brother? That question was a major red flag. I panicked but quickly decided to lie. Yeah, my little brother and my buddy are here now, playing PlayStation. No worries, he just said. Great. I'll be there soon to pick it up quickly. He hung up. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door just enough for the chain lock to hold. The guy standing there was a large, stocky man who looked absolutely nothing like the name Mark. He had no cash in his hands. He immediately demanded, I need to test the microphone right now. Let's go to your computer, I told him. There's no need. I'll hand you the boxed up set and you can test it in your car. He then slammed his hand against the door frame testing the strength of the chain, and gave the door a hard shove. He said in a menacing tone, "No, it won't work outside. I need to set up the whole system inside. I have to come into the apartment. Hurry up, I'm busy." His aggression and absolute insistence on crossing the threshold shocked me. I knew he was testing my lie. I shouted, loud enough for any neighbors to hear, "No! You are not coming inside. You either take the package now, or I call the police. My brother and friend just heard you." The mention of my brother seemed to throw him off. His rage turned into a flash of surprise. He backed off immediately but gave me a nasty look. "Fine, next time then," he muttered, turning and quickly descending the stairs. He didn't take the microphone or leave the $50. I slammed the door and locked every deadbolt. Peeking through the blinds, I watched him get into an old, white car parked oddly far down the street, nowhere near the curb of my building. He hadn't come to park to load a bulky item. He'd come to confirm I was alone. He hadn't come to buy the microphone. He came to get inside my apartment. The thought of what he would have done if I hadn't lied and let him in, what he would have done to me if he'd found me alone, is something I still don't want to think about. I was shaken for days, and I've never used my home address for a marketplace meetup again.